Welcome back to Across the Table. It's the core group here, and now that you're seeing us, it's pretty easy to delineate Matthew, Najee, Jacob, and Corey. Corey will work on getting that you in that intro song.
Oh, I was thinking about that. A lot of podcasts I listen to just intro at the beginning of the recording. They don't have a...
Well, see...
Either way works for me.
Well, I've just realized a major missed opportunity. We absolutely should have renamed ourselves. I should have been Corey. You should have been Jacob. That is a horrible missed opportunity right there.
Yeah. Well, sorry for that one. I apologize. We are going to talk about something a little more serious here. So for those of you who enjoy our funnier topics or more lighthearted topics, this may or may not be the one for you. We hope that you can get some value out of it. The first thing that I'd love to do is just reiterate who we are, why we started, how we got here, and why this matters for us, what we're about to talk about. Across the Table is the conversations that matter to us that we hope more people will have. So the idea is sitting across the table from a conversation that matters. So for us here today, in the conversation that we're about to have, if you simply think about it in that way, it's why we're here, is so that we can potentially have a conversation that maybe you're not hearing enough of or you're not hearing enough sides of, that you'll be inspired to have more conversations about that topic that we hope more people are having. So with that said, Najee, if you'll introduce kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So over the past, I think it's been over the past week, I've been talking back and forth with these guys about 2020 and what it's brought us so far. And shit feels like it's kind of going down the drain. We got the tensions rising between the U.S. and Iran. We've got Australia, which we referenced in our previous podcast, which is like experiencing the worst brush fire in recorded history. We have basically the what looks like the start of a revolution happening in China, and Middle East is just in complete disrepair right now. And not to mention the whole Trump impeachment thing that's happening. So every corner that you're turning right now, as far as news and media is concerned, there are just a lot of big problems out in the world, and they feel insurmountable in a lot of ways. It's very hard things to discuss, and part of the reason I wanted us to have this discussion is I wanted to make this a conversation where we can promote our heartbeat in the midst of a lot of the chaos that's going on. Because I think what happens frequently, and what's happened in the past when we get to these really major world conflict moments, is everybody kind of gets lost in the fear of what's to come or what could happen. And we don't take the time to sit down and have these conversations about what we can do in these situations, how to cope, what to feel, the types of conversations we need to be having back and forth about how these things will affect us going forward. So with that, I really wanted to sit down with you guys and just kind of pour it out a little bit, like where you're at, how we feel about the situations, and what our thoughts are on going forward. Kind of the necessary steps that need to be taken.
It's super interesting, and it ties right back into what I was just talking about, right? This idea of having more important conversations, having your ear out, listening to what's going on and making your own opinion about it. I think the first thing that having this conversation does for me is kind of force me into a self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Because before the conversation was brought up, I'm in my daily routines, my weekly routines. Right now I go to work Monday through Friday, and I am focused on making sales and producing good marketing. I'm making sure we're working on Across the Table, getting our name out there, letting people know who we are, trying to gather a following. I'm married, so coming home, I have our wonderful dog Coda that we're taking care of, and all this blends into, it makes it very easy to ignore or kind of put my bubble up, if you will, for everything that's going on. And one of the things that I'm really thankful that Across the Table and Up and Out Studios is helping me to be and become is someone who is more aware. So once you started having this conversation with me, then I was quick to actually go and do a little bit of research and see what's going on. How is Trump handling the missiles that were launched? What is his response? And figuring out, Trump was actually the person who called in the assassination for the general over there. And, it really forces you to wrestle with some hard issues. And as a citizen of the United States of America, where do I stand and what do I think my role is as a part of this nation? And those are hard questions. And they're hard questions, and because they're so hard, it's easy to, and if you listen to our last podcast, it's easy to slip into the comfort of what's available to you and kind of tune out the things that you don't really want to deal with. Because we talked about the brush fires in Australia. It's really heartbreaking. It's really sad, and it's the idea of, like, if I had to stand in a field and look at 500 million dead animals, how would I handle that? I guarantee you it would break me if I actually had to look at and see that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so hard. My temptation is to slip into something and go, I don't really know what to do about it. And so I think the encouragement for me here is, as I'm learning to be more informed and have these types of conversations, is that I would encourage more people to be having these conversations, because you don't know what can come out of having the right conversation with the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
Maybe you happen to be in a room with someone who, again, because of their daily routines, weekly routines, their focus, their kind of head down, trying to accomplish something that's really good, they're unaware of something they might actually be able to have an impact on.
Yeah.
And I don't know for how many people that works, but I think who's to say it's not one person somewhere, right? If more people are having the conversation, that chance increases that more people could do something that impacts that positively.
Yeah. I think there's an overwhelming fear that exists, especially in the modern world of information, where we have, and I think we discussed this in our World Peace episode, we have all this access to see all these things that are going on, and it's problem after problem after problem. And I think people go through these very quick stages where it's like, holy crap, something's going on. This is terrible. I can't do anything about it. I have to ignore it. Because it's this fear that there's nothing that you can do to offer any form of solution or help to the situation. And so often I think that's why we retreat to comfort. I would even argue that it's, in most situations, it's not people actively doing it. Yeah. People aren't actively trying to hide from what's going on in the world. It's just, it's so overwhelming to see such a massive problem and have no control over how everything pans out. And
it's also too much information to process.
Right. It's hard. It's hard staying current. It's very, very hard staying current. It's difficult, but it is a very real necessity. Now, that's not to say that, like, I don't think every single conversation you have with your friends and family and people that you care about needs to be this really weighty, drawn out, hard, here's all the problems of the world. What are we doing to solve them today? You're just going to burn yourself out like that.
Absolutely.
But I definitely think there's always a time and a place to have it. And I think, especially now, like I've really felt that this was a time and place to have this conversation. And the other half of being up on these current events is, for me, what I've noticed is the trend coming into 2020, looking at the past 20 years, all the advancements that we've made and all the progress that we've made, is I want us to start having conversations about how we adopt a more forward outlook of the world. How we start to have a conversation about the next 10 years versus the next 10 days. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a great start to addressing a lot of the issues that we have going on around the globe. I think people get so caught up in tomorrow, and I got to make tomorrow work, that we forget to look forward to the future. We forget to look towards the innovations and changes that we can start building towards today that will affect the world maybe a few years down the line, maybe even a few generations down the line. But adopting a perspective of we want to make things better than when we came in, I think is the stage we need to walk into with these new roaring 20s are for us. We're in the modern roaring 20s. And I think that is the perspective that we have to start to adopt if we have any hope of creating something that's sustainable for us in the future, as in our 40s and 50s, and our kids and our grandkids and so on and so forth. And again, not an easy conversation to have. There's no simple answers to put forth towards it, but for me, that shows just how much more energy is required to put into it, because it doesn't have a simple solution.
Yeah, and I think ultimately this comes down to the conversation again of looking inward.
Yeah.
For each person. As you look at how you handle these types of situations, what ways are you going about them? Mm-hmm. And I look at myself, right? So this causes me to really look at not just who I am now, but who I've been. And I think a lot of the ways that I view my role as a human, as a person amongst billions of other people, is I have my sphere of influence. Mm. And however big that sphere of influence is determined by the actions that I take and the goals that I have and how hard I'm working towards those goals. But for most of my life, I'm 28, I'm not old by any means. For most of my life, you're in that growing up phase, you're learning a lot, you're understanding how the world works, you're understanding what type of person you are and seeing what types of people other people are. And for me, a lot of my life has been almost inherently, how are the people around me doing? And how do I help them the best that I can? The mindset there being, if I can do that, maybe if I help someone out as best I can, and I love them as best I can, and I treat them the way that I want to be treated, maybe they would go and do that for the next person, and it's that multiplicative effect, right? The multiplier effect, if you will.
Yeah.
And there's this, I guess, because that made so much sense to me, because that was just how my world worked. The idea of having to go the next mile and stay current seemed almost unnecessary for me, right? Because when you were talking, the first thing that popped up was when I was a manager at Chick-fil-A. One of the things that the store leader taught me was the idea of different people in different roles have different responsibilities for how they look at time. Someone who's a team member on the ground floor, taking orders on front counter or drive-through, whatever it be, they're thinking about the next 10 minutes. Do I have everything that I need for drive-through for the next 10 minutes to be successful? Am I going to, while we're in this lunch rush, so on and so forth? The next level up, the team leader who's kind of in charge of, organizing and even supporting the manager on duty is thinking about the next hour. Are we prepared for the lunch hour? Do we have everything that we needed for that? And then so on and so forth. The shift leader is looking at the next, I think, day. So you're coming into your shift going, this is how the day's going to go. The next level up is going to go a week. But then our store manager, right, is thinking for the next year. And it gets all the way to this point. And it really becomes a matter of trust there. Mm-hmm. Do I trust that the person who's supposed to be looking at the next year is doing that? And that the way that that's going to affect me and the way that I'm looking at the next day, week, day, hour, 10 minutes is going to trickle down, and we're going to run efficiently, and
right.
Everyone's going to enjoy doing what they're doing. So it becomes a question of, for me, what is my role? What are the conversations that I need to be having and thinking about? And do I trust the people who are in place to be thinking that long-term ahead to do so? And it makes me question, is that the way that I should be going about it? Should I be looking at leadership, if you will? Because in an ideal world, I'm trusting my leadership.
I think the problem with that is it's a lot easier to trust your manager than it is to trust every general and every leader that we have governing the United States of America or other countries.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets a little bit disheartening, because it's like you can go and vote, but that doesn't mean that the people that you trust are going to get
Right.
in control. Or
So you have to
so there.
manipulate your own trust in that sense, and
And
whether
I think
that's good or bad,
and I
right?
think that's why you have some people that, like, I don't know. I can imagine there's two responses to that. You either shut down, like we've kind of mentioned. It's like it's too much to take in,
Yeah.
or you lash out.
Yeah.
And we have a mix of both. And in the midst of that, what do we do? Like, I don't know the answer to that, because I don't know. I mean, that's the struggle, and I don't know how to say anything productive about it. But I think that's identifying maybe where this angst is coming from. Maybe that's the start of something that can be.
It's the
positive.
age-old problem-solving term you've heard. In order to solve a problem, you have to express that there is one in the first place. There has to be room for you to say, okay, this is not working the way that it stands right now. But it can't be an all-out attack, which is what happens frequently in these conversations. Conversation breaks down into feud and conflict, and you get to a point where people just don't listen to each other anymore. So it's hard. It's really hard to overcome, and I genuinely believe it's why 90% of the people that I talk to will not discuss politics. They hate discussing politics. Nobody wants to express where they stand because everybody feels like if they do, they're going to make an adversary right there on the spot.
Yeah, and for the record, we literally are doing this to speak against that because we, regardless if you agree or disagree with anything that we say or vice versa, like, I don't know, there's a certain level of respect that we want to bring to conversations like this.
Yeah.
Because that's where you find the humanity in people. It's like, we understand that people don't wake up and want to do bad things. Just because someone wants to do something different than you doesn't mean it's bad. It's just different. And different isn't, like, there doesn't need to be a negative connotation to that. So, again, that's where we're at.
Yeah. And to be honest, that's not even to say, like, I'm not perfect every time when it comes to this.
No, it's hard.
Out of all those headlines, I saw red just
Yeah.
consistently reading them. Like, it is infuriating to look at. And I had to take a moment to, like, sit back, really process the information, and eventually getting to the point of reaching out and talking to you guys about it because it's just bugging me so much. Like, it's not easy to know. Like, looking through information, this is stuff that I've kept up with over a long period of time. It's not easy to know that wars in the Middle East, most of the casualties, I think like over 60%, have been civilian. And so for the U.S. or anybody to even start to entertain a conversation about having a war in the Middle East is infuriating to me. It's like regular people are dying. That's like it. And so for you to start entertaining a conversation like that, it boils my blood. The things that are happening in China right now, you know, you have this overwhelmingly brutal policy that's happening, and you have all these people screaming that they're suffering, and they're not getting any type of help. You know, even back to the Australia situation, 500 million animals are just gone. It's insane.
It is.
Insane. And to even like pull that into perspective, like imagine that being here. Imagine that being walking out of your house and every animal out in the wild is dead in front of you. Like, and it boils my blood to like, why aren't people getting active? Why aren't people getting involved? And it's really having to understand too, like I can very easily create a narrative of why things are. It's a lot harder to go and dig deep into the grit of it. Because just as angry as I can get about war and what happens to civilians, there's complexities to what people experience over there. There's complexities to what a soldier experiences. There's complexities to what the enemy soldier experiences. Like nothing is cut and dry. It's all on the gray spectrum. And again, it just bleeds back into the necessity of conversation. You know, I have the benefit of being able to talk with people who have been in it, are currently in it, can tell me their perspective, and I get a lot of not what the news says. just a small tangent. News is like, if there was ever anything you should take with a grain of salt, it is what you see on the news. And that is from any and everything you see. Always take it with a grain of salt. Always do your research. Always dig it. Like, you have to do a little bit of work, but it's worth it to get the truth. So you can actually have a confident position on where you stand. And you can actually see if politicians or things like that really align with your beliefs. Like, you have to do the research in order to be properly involved.
I think that's the untapped power of humanity, and it's speaking back to what you're talking about, and you're the one that always quotes it, but the ability to entertain an idea without believing it, is that?
It is the mark of an educated mind to entertain a thought without accepting it.
Accepting it, yeah. And
that was the whole last podcast for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, literally, to me, this idea of if we were able to improve our ability of accepting different opinions, not accepting them, but entertaining them, and working through those opinions, and understanding where people are coming from, and understanding how they got there, and understanding more of the cause of situations, I think we'd be able to root out a lot faster the people who are toxic and go, hey, you're just in it for you purely. And there's no concept of the rest of the world and what they're going through and how the world is going to progress. And then also find new ideas that would progress us in ways that we would not have thought of before, because it's a localized group of people, usually a pretty small group, all coming up with something that they agree on or can have these types of conversations about, and those are spread out over 7 billion
Which
people.
is, I don't know, something you said in there just kind of like, there's something in there that fuels the fire to like make movies that have different perspectives, or because, I mean, we've probably talked about this before on past episodes, but like being able to step in to watching 1917, stepping into the perspective of a soldier, like, well, it's like your immediate knee-jerk reaction is to go, well, we don't want war, because we see that there's so many, like, and then it's just, anyways, it's a little bit of a tangent, sorry.
No.
But it's, I just want people to like be open-minded, and like, doing it through movies is really like a magnificent way to get people out of their own mind and their own story and step into someone else's story, because that's, I don't know, stories are important, and that once we can get that across, I think that's when you just make you open the floor for more civil discourse on tricky topics.
And to your point of like opening your mind, I don't even necessarily say this in defense or support of Trump, but like something I find myself having to consider. Like, you called in an airstrike to kill a general, and that's all I saw. I was like, man, that's terrible. But
There's more to the story.
Yeah, I also don't sit in a chair and have to consider the safety of 350 million people at any given moment, and that every given action that I make will directly affect 350 million people, and what our appearance is on the global stage and how others, like, there are so many tiny factors that go into making that one decision that we get to see. And this is why I say tread carefully when it comes to the news, because the news is reporting on the decision, but you don't get to see the full backdrop of how you come to these decisions. Because I could easily sit here right now as me, Najee, the guy who works at Home Depot, and be like, I wouldn't have done that. Very easy for me to do.
Yes.
But if I had all the information in front of me, I couldn't tell you for sure that I wouldn't make the same decision. So it's complexities like that. It's all these things in tandem together. Like, in order for us to move forward as just an entire race, like humanity, in order to move forward and survive, this aspect of us has to change. This closed-off nature that a lot of us have adopted globally has to change. We have to start to open up and have to start conversing with one another. Whether it's the conversations we love to have or not, it's just necessary. in order for us to move forward and more than just survive. Because right now it just feels like we've been surviving on crumbs and drips of water. And it's like we can be so much more than that.
Yeah. It's such a big conversation, and the idea of a 30-minute episode for this is hard because it encompasses everything. You talked about stories and how those affect us, right? Everything affects the way that we're going to behave and how we react to the events of the world. And the way that I grew up, the parents that I had, which we've talked about before, the video games I played, the movies I watched, the shows I watched, the people that I hang out with and converse with. And if anything, I think it's something that I've always kind of embellished in my mind is this idea of becoming a more educated person. Because my priority is on loving people and treating people well, that takes precedence over anything and everything else in my life. I am in constant contact with people who suffer and struggle in their day-to-day lives, and it is hard, and it takes energy from me to focus on them and to love them and to care about them and to prioritize them. For me, just like anything else, if I was going to go work out, if I wanted to be healthier physically, I'd have to create a routine to then go and set up my workout and eat better and so on and so forth, right? And this all comes down to the same concept: is depending on how educated you want to be is how educated you will become, and how dedicated you are to following whatever process you set in place or have help setting in place. That's how educated you're going to become. You talked about reading more books. That's a form of education. You're learning from past people or present people and their opinions and perspectives on different things, whether that be an interesting story or a nonfiction, whatever, right? And I think for me, the idea of watching the news, yes, sure, is the more current part of this, but just the idea of not settling when it comes to your awareness of differing opinions. And I think that's one of the people's biggest upsets about the South. You talk about the Bible Belt. One of the most interesting conversations I've ever had is with my cousin who spent a lot of time up north, who said, when you're a Christian in the North, you're a Christian. It's not because someone told you you were a Christian or your family were Christians, or it's something that you have determined that makes sense to you, that you believe in, that you put your faith in. And you really have to be, because not everyone is just Christian. That's not just the norm. So for me, this idea of living in the South, having to, as someone who decided, yeah, I actually do believe in this. This is actually where I'm putting my faith. That's one of my biggest challenges, is to not just say, well, that's just the norm. So I'm just settling for, I actually have to work to understand why I have that, why I believe that, and go and learn more about other people and how they got to be where they're at, and work with them to learn more about humanity in total. It's not just this is how I am, and I think that's what a lot of people do. This is how I am, and I don't make any apologies for that. That's fine. Be confident in who you are. But don't write off other people's confidence because you think your confidence is more important. There's 7 billion of us. You're not that special. I'm sorry. We grow up, millennials, right? We grow up in a society that says, take care of yourself, treat yourself, you're important, you matter. You do.
But not more than any other person.
Not more than any other person. And when you take the time to realize that you have to balance both of those things, these conversations become a lot more approachable. I can sit down and have a conversation where I say, I think Trump carries himself pretty terribly. As a president, as someone who took the position that he took and took on the responsibilities that he took, it doesn't make any sense to me that you would ever tweet anything. Almost ever.
Yeah.
Except maybe in a state of emergency where you wanted to reach a broader audience, not to just pout. That's not the position you took. You knew walking into it what you were doing. And to be able to say that and then hear someone else's opinion on it who might disagree with me and go, that's very interesting how you came to your opinion, that's what we should be moving towards.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty hard to argue against. learning to live with one another. It's being confident in who you are and learning to live with other people.
And
Well, one thing. You go.
No, you haven't spoke. Like,
Go ahead.
I mean, I think that's kind of why I take a little bit of optimism, because I feel like, generally speaking, I mean, with America, like, we're moving in a direction like that. It's becoming more popular to be open-minded. Now, I think that's a complex thing that I don't want to oversimplify, but like, that's conversations that people are having. People like open-minded people, because in America, most of us are different.
Yeah.
Just like unanimously, most of us are just different. And so in order to coexist, you have to have some level of respect and understanding for your neighbors, not only like in your local community, but like on a broader scale as well.
And here,
So
here's-
go ahead.
I'll just say one thing I'll say, because I agree with you 100% about President Trump, but the one thing I've always appreciated and will always appreciate about his campaign and him getting into office is him being who he was brought forth a lot of questions that we as a nation have not considered in a very long time. Brought forth a lot of issues that have, up until his presidency and his candidacy, were more or less not in the public light. So even in that, there was a positive to take from it.
Sure.
There was a huge
Usually is,
positive. Yeah, there was something to take out of it. It was like, well, I don't love that you're there, but I do love the fact that some of the conversation that's being had right now is prominent, is necessary.
Go
ahead.
Oh no, it just goes back to like, there are reasons why people like Trump. And if you, like, there's so many people that are so adamantly like hateful towards Trump. And I understand like anger, but like, I don't know, I don't want hate to become the dominant emotion. But going back to like Trump supporters, there's reasons for that. And if you understand those reasons, you can go, okay, well, that makes sense. And like, maybe you go, I'm sorry you feel that way. And like, you can address the problems from there.
No.
If you don't agree with Trump and a lot of things that he does, which there are a lot of people like that. So, or at least a lot of those people make themselves very vocal.
So, I'm very impressionable from movies. I
Same.
take a lot of ideas from movies and like.
Absolute same.
Yeah. And Jacob and I, you already brought it up, but we went and saw 1917 last night, and I think something that a big point that movie brings up and can remind us of is that, so it takes the scale of World War I, and on paper, when you learn about that in school, it's this number versus this number.
Sure.
It's this statistic versus this statistic. And it really takes all of World War I and then shows you that through the eyes of two people. And it really gives you a sense of scale.
Yeah.
And something I take away from that, and like have known for a long time, but it's like it's a really good example for someone that doesn't get it. Show them this movie, or if maybe it'll open the eyes for someone that sees this movie. It reminds everybody that every person is a person, and not just a number. And if we take that approach towards looking at the world, we're going to be a lot better off.
Yeah.
It's not 500 million animals are dead. It's one single animal 500 million times.
Yeah.
You know, you look at each individual one. It's crazy. And I know that's like, it's easy to say, to go, oh, you know, scale. Take a look at the, you know, bigger picture, take a look at the smaller picture, I guess, and to look at it for reference. But it's something that I think we need to reconsider with how everybody lives.
Yeah.
It's just remember that each person is a person.
It's super interesting, actually, because I'm currently in marketing, right? And in marketing, there's this shift that I'm really thankful about, but there's this shift from kind of your old school marketing, which is purely number, statistic-driven, data-driven, no names, no faces.
How do we get their money in our wallet?
Yes, your demographic used to be 18 to 25-year-olds.
Yep.
that's who we go after. We don't care who they are.
Yeah.
Towards this idea of inbound marketing, which really personalizes the process. I'm looking to understand who I'm selling to so that I can best work with them.
Yes.
And so for me, in both the job that I'm holding now with marketing, and I actually work with Tim, and then doing Up and Out Studios, running marketing for us, I'm looking at a lot of numbers constantly. And it's a lot of puzzle pieces. So what's really, really fascinating about what you just said and how this correlates is maybe someone's really passionate about history and they don't know it because they haven't been shown the content that sparks that passion.
Yeah.
So they go see the movie 1917. They get passionate because they go, wow, that's really interesting to see that perspective and understand how that all unfolded. They go back to the numbers that they were initially taught, and those become a lot more interesting because it's a larger understanding of how everything works together.
Yeah.
Because for me, as I'm talking to people about our podcast and how it's working and what they like and what they don't like, I'm getting to go back then and see those numbers and understand those numbers a lot better than what they just maybe used to have been, which was kind of overwhelming.
And it's the conversation, like to your point of 1917. When you go on television and hear 20 people died, it's sad to hear that. But if you go on television and hear Susie, Michael, Dan, Lucy, blah, 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 mother, father, son, daughter, it's a very different effect.
Always.
Well,
You have a
20 doesn't
different
even
outlook.
seem like a lot. And then you go count your immediate family.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
5 in my immediate family,
Yep.
plus 15 of extended.
Sure.
If you put a name to each one of them.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Absolutely.
That's so many people. But you go $20, you know, it's a,
Yep.
it's a small amount. It's not
Sure.
a large amount of
Yeah,
money.
yeah, yeah.
You know, you it's all about how you reference it to scale. It's like 20 people died. That's crazy. And then you think about, I don't know, everything going on right now. You think about one general died. And then you go, well, that dude had a family. And then, I mean, and like, I don't even want to get into like, you know what? Not even a general. Let's say a soldier dies. It's just like the amount of people that affects is more than one.
Yeah.
One person dies. That person has a family or has someone that either brought them into this world or they brought someone into this world, and that's going to affect their parents, that's going to affect their children, that's going to affect their friends. It's just a lot. And if you take a step back to look at how much each action affects, it's almost unbelievable to me how little people think their actions affect the world.
Yeah. And
Because people go, I'm one person, what does that do? And it's like,
And that's-
it's like, what do you
that's
mean?
the reality. The
What do you
reality
mean?
is that the culture of individualism has hijacked humanity.
Yeah.
Period. This constant culture of self-improvement, self-success has just completely taken our image of what humanity is supposed to be away from us. That we've arrived at the juncture where we don't think our actions have any consequence to anybody else.
There's one overwhelming truth that I've learned in the 28 years. There's a balance to everything. Because I would never tell someone to scrap the idea of individualism.
Yeah.
I would never tell someone that they're not special.
Yeah.
You are special. You're not more special. And it goes back to that concept, right? And it's the ability to understand that the ways that you're improving yourself matter on a global scale. Like, it's not about you. You don't improve yourself for you. And I think that's where we miss a lot of this understanding of why we're improving ourselves.
Yeah.
We improve ourselves so that we can produce something that affects the people around us, right? And whether you want to or not, what you do is going to affect people around you.
Yeah.
So whether you have the understanding that you're going to affect it or not, it doesn't matter.
That's the point where I get upset. I angrily want to do like what my dad did with me when I was 7. I'm pretty sure I've told you guys this story a million times. 1984 World Atlas, picture of the universe. Zoom in, our galaxy. Zoom in, our solar system. Zoom in, Earth. You can barely see it on the page. And then you're a speck on that. Now tell me that you're more important than the next person.
Yeah. It
Like,
reminds me
it's-
of Pale Blue Dot.
Yeah.
It's like reading the opening chapters to that book.
Yeah, it's this perspective that I don't know where we adopted it, but it's just toxic. Like, dude.
And so to kind of pull it all back to this concept of what's going on current events. Oh, go ahead if you wanted to jump in.
Well, I just think the source of it was probably, okay, so let's think about generation before us.
Yeah.
It's ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. It was a unified, like,
Yeah.
everybody does everything for everyone. And then we've sort of had the ability to go, okay, now what about myself? And then it's just too much in the other direction.
Yeah.
Again, it's like what you said about balance, but it's like, it hasn't always been individualistic.
Right.
It's just like, we got to find a balance of, okay, so everyone did everything for everybody then. They didn't think about themselves, and now, self-care is a big thing. Or it's something that they lacked. So now we need to take a step towards, hey, care about yourself. Be who you are. Like, think about you. But it's gone in the... It's had the adverse effect, which is like, now I only care about myself.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you find that balance of, take care of yourself so you can take care of others, then you're in a good place.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. No one has spoken to that. It's very well said, and it's the truth. And I think, so pulling it back into the current events, right? Mm-hmm. Educating yourself is not about you. Mm-mm. It's ultimately, it does affect how you live. It does affect how you act. It does affect what your goals are and how you approach those goals. But everything that you do ultimately has an effect on someone else.
Yeah.
And so having the understanding that, I want to educate myself and be more aware of what's going on around me and have more conversations that I believe matter in a productive way. That, to me, is when you start getting into the balance of, I'm improving myself because it matters. It does matter to me that I'm improving myself, but it matters to me because it affects other people. Mm. You're stepping into the boundaries in the realm of, to me, again, untapped potential as humanity. To be able to have the hard conversations in a productive way. And I think the idea that we shy away from hard conversations is the scariest thing about our society.
Well, it's like everybody in the entire world has adopted the idea of like procrastination. It's like we never address anything until it's too late. It's like if we just got on top of something, if we went,
well, I think people are scared.
You have this issue, let's talk it out. Instead, it's like ignore, nuclear war. It's like, well, let's address it up. We could have avoided this. Let's address it up front.
I think people are scared to have the conversation.
Yes,
I think
that's what it is.
Because if I have an issue here and I have an issue here, then it becomes ignore, not because of necessarily procrastination. I think it is that.
Yeah.
But the procrastination is there because, well, if I say anything, I might hurt someone, or I might get, destroyed on social media, or I might get, and I mean, someone like, pick someone controversial, right, in your mind. I'm not going to say a name because then that becomes controversial, right? Even I'm afraid to do it to a certain degree right now. But if you pick someone that in your head is controversial, imagine that person talking and conversing about their opinions in a way that was conducive to fluid conversation. Mm-hmm. Important conversations being had in a way that, you could imagine whoever that person was sitting there and respecting the person they're sitting across from, not berating them or belittling them.
Yeah.
And saying, I understand how you got there, understand how I got here, and let's figure out what the best approach is for both
because
parties involved.
the way of expressing ideas now is not, here's what I think, what do you think about that? It's, let's take social media for
that's where I was
an
on,
example.
in my head.
Let's go. Opinions now are throw it at the wall, that's my opinion, read it and agree with me or fuck off.
Yes.
Yeah. And then there's comments, but it's not a conversation. Nope. It's like, this is what I think, that's it.
Yes.
And it's not to go, social media's to blame.
No,
but it's like...
It comes back to people,
It comes back to people, and the point is, like, it's not a two-way street anymore. It's a post. Yeah. It's a flyer, it's whatever. This is it, there's no conversation that's being had because of this.
Well, it's the ultimate way to have your cake and eat it too.
Yes.
For what society has become.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't agree with you. I don't want to deal with not having to agree with you. So I'm going to just post it somewhere.
And then it's not my problem.
And I'm done with it.
Yeah.
I walk away from it. And that's ultimately just causes worse side effects.
Yep.
You're causing more tension. You're not getting to some solution that could help. Ultimately, I mean, truly, it's so easy for me to relate everything back to Christianity. As a Christian, as someone who believes in ridiculous things, like when you really get down to the idea of what I believe, you just go, that's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm like, yeah, I know, and I believe it. It's crazy. I'm never, ever, ever going to convince someone of my belief by yelling at them, berating them, telling them how wrong they are, calling them, insert any kind of profanity here. Yep. The only way I'm even going to be able to start a conversation, because that's something I believe, there's plenty of conversations to be had where Two people disagree, and it's okay for them to disagree. Mm-hmm. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. In fact, that is normal.
Yes.
The ability to understand why someone else disagrees and start to learn about the person who disagrees with you matters.
Well, the problem is the debates about topics don't start. They start with a statement. They don't start with a question. You need to go, why do you think this? And now it's, I think this. Fuck you if you don't think that. And it's like, it's figure out what they're thinking.
Please.
Start with a question.
It's why I will not, as a Christian, I will not discuss politics, sexuality. There's a couple other really big button topics that I will not discuss with someone until they've gotten to know me.
Yes.
And until I've gotten to know them. Mm-hmm. Once you understand who I am as a person, I will gladly share with you my opinions on those things. And they're going to be different than what you probably believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I don't say that I'm absolutely right.
Yeah.
I'm 28 years old. It has to be true that I know everything about what I believe and that it is 100% true. No, I've come to the belief through events and actions over my life. And so have you. Mm-hmm. And if you know that I'm the type of person that cares about you as a person, you're much more willing to understand where I'm coming from and vice versa. And I think as these current events, as these horrible issues continue to pop up, because humanity is broken. They're not going to magically go away. In the same way, you're not just going to magically get in shape. It's all a process. So if more people started to understand their personal responsibility in becoming, I'll just say the blanket statement, a better person in all the ways that we've discussed here, and there's more than just what we've discussed, then the global agenda can start to form about how to progress towards these issues being not just not happening, but being responded to the right ways, quickly and efficiently and healthily.
Yeah.
Thank you, Corey. You made a real. I don't know. I just want to re-emphasize it. I know you just said it, but it's such a pragmatic way of looking at conflict, and it's like, oh, that's something I can do. Ask a question.
Ask a question.
Instead of making statements
without an agenda.
Yes, exactly.
Please.
Yes, without an agenda.
Yeah.
Ask a question. It just I don't know. It just resonates with me.
Yeah.
It just is. Yeah. It just feels so good to feel like there's something I can tangibly do and hold when I face conflict with. I mean, maybe it's not that easy, but it still is a place to start. And maybe it helps.
Well, that's one of those big things where when I ask someone, well, okay, it helps two ways. It explains their side. Okay, it helps in 3 points. So
and really listen as well.
If you disagree with somebody, asking why they feel that way tackles 3 things. Mm-hmm. So number one, it's gonna open them up to what you have to say. Because if you went, this is why I think this way, here's why you're wrong, X, Y, Z, they're already checked out before the conversation starts.
100%.
If you go, why do you believe this? Mm-hmm. They're going to give you X, Y, and Z, or they're not going to be able to give you X, Y, Z, and then okay, so you're not that, you're not that informed. Because that's happened before where someone goes, this, and you go, why do you think that? And if you go, why do you think that? They have to back it up with, either they get stumped,
right,
or they have facts to back it up that they believe.
Yeah.
So it opens them up to conversation. It opens them up to what you have to say afterwards, and it starts the conversation. It also gives you arguing points. If you're informed on what they think, then you can go, well, to counter that, blank, blank, blank.
And I think arguing has such a negative connotation to it, right?
Right.
But even hilariously enough, the debate that we just had, right, it's silly in context. Mm-hmm. But the way in which it is approached, and it's something that I always appreciated about kind of my high school experience, was whenever we had a debate, there was an emphasis on, if you don't debate well, you're not allowed in this debate. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You have to respect other people's opinions. Mm-hmm. You have to give them their due time. You don't speak over people. You really listen to what they have to say, and then you formulate your argument around that. Yeah. And you present that argument. Arguing is not negative. In its nature. Yes, it is.
I'm blown away. Well, it goes back to the Joe Rogan quote that if I can paraphrase, essentially he looks at conflict as, I'm going to actually bring it up because I don't want to paraphrase it, because it's really good. And essentially it's saying conflict is good, and like it's like it leads to production.
Well, it's necessary.
Well, conflict leads to resolution.
Resolution.
If there's no conflict, then it's two people in their own heads going, how the fuck do I solve this? And then nothing happens.
If we're going back to world peace, then conflict is not going anywhere because the world is not perfect. We're always going to have differing opinions.
Yes.
People are always going to grow up in different situations and circumstances. Death is still a thing, whether that was a murder or a natural cause of death. People struggle. People have to face those things. And because of those things, people are different. There's different personalities. There's different passions. There's different likes and interests. There's never not going to be conflict. So learning how to work through conflict has to be our priority. Not eliminating conflict. Why are we in our? I would say, and I would argue that in our individualism kind of push, it's the concept of, well, I'm eliminating conflict.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
No, you're just sweeping it under the rug until it gets worse and worse. And most people learn that over time. Like, if you just don't deal with something, it doesn't go away.
Well, yeah, people deal with it one of three ways. Either healthily, there you go, okay, here's a healthy dose of, conflict, conversation, you think this, I think this, cool. Or they don't handle it, and then it's just, they don't have they're pushovers their entire life. Or the opposite of that is they become I don't want to hear it, this is my way or the highway.
Right.
And if we get more of those people, just like few more people that go, I agree or I disagree. And, okay, another big thing for those people, within the group of people that can have a healthy conversation, there needs to be you need to be able to recognize when to walk away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Sure.
not every argument is going to come to I agree with you or you agree
absolutely.
with me, or I used to know someone that used to get angry with me when I would go, okay, so they would go like, let's say we have an argument. They wholeheartedly believe what they say. I express what I feel. There's no sympathy towards what I feel. And then I'll go, okay. They used to lose their minds. They'd go, why the fuck do you say okay to me? And it's like, because I'm not going to change your mind.
No.
And it's
absolutely.
like, I'm not going to waste my energy arguing.
1,000,000%. And I think and that's kind of what I was getting to, and I'll get to did you find the quote? Okay. After this. That's what I was getting to with the concept of, nope, lost it. I was like, I had it. I paused to say that. I lost it in that moment.
sorry.
I was like, just don't let it go. Don't let it go. Stare at Corey until it comes back.
All good. It'll come back.
So if I can say the quote then, honest conflict has more social value than dishonest harmony. And I don't know, I've always been struck by that.
Sure.
And it makes me, as someone who is a peacekeeper and sometimes can be a pushover, it makes me go, man, I really need to tackle conflict. I don't know. I always try to avoid it, even though I understand its social value. And so it's I don't know. I guess you could just say something I'm working on, but
Yeah.
Well, it all bleeds back into why I hate small talk.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does nothing.
It's valueless.
It is.
It has no
because it's
value.
like, how's the weather? Fine. Fuck, dude, I can't.
Do you know how many
I-
conversations I've had with people where they've started off and said, I hate small talk, and now we're
Then-
like best friends?
Yes.
I'm
Maybe-
like, oh, great, we're going to get along.
Great.
Wonderful.
maybe that's how
Because
I
I
need to
can't
approach
do
life
it.
now.
Yeah, I mean, seriously.
Or social interaction.
It sets the tone that I have no interest in talking about things that don't matter.
That don't matter.
That aren't going to change anything,
Well,
that aren't going
here's-
to
Well,
provide
and it's like,
anything.
and I start conversations with so what do you do? And 9 times out of 10, a lot of people don't. Not 9 times out of 10, but a lot of people can't answer that question.
Well, here's
a lot of
the-
people don't want to go I don't know what I'm doing, and then it's like a dad question. It's like, well, how do you, what do you do?
got going on
What do
these
you
days,
got
son?
going on? Yeah, where
How
you
come
going?
you're not in college?
Where are you
How
going to
come-
school? Yeah, fuck, dude. But and people go, you're like, why do you ask fucking boring questions like that? It's like, it's not. I want to know what makes you tick.
I always ask. I always
like,
ask the question, "What is your dream?"
Yeah.
And it usually most times, 9 times out of 10, I have to contextualize.
Yeah.
I can't just get away with that question because people
Yeah.
go, I don't know. And I'm like, okay,
Well,
if you got to do one thing for the rest of your life tomorrow,
Yeah.
and you didn't have to worry about money or education or whatever, you just got to do it, what would you do? And that usually brings about kind of that conversation you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, I get to learn more about people.
Here's the reality of small talk. The sad reality of small talk is, in actuality, I don't think anybody really enjoys small talk. I think the truth behind
can't
why
tell you.
small talk happens is there is a very real fear of being straight up with people.
Being
that you
straight up
won't
with
be
people,
accepted.
or also just social
Or
anxiety.
just social
right?
anxiety,
Like,
yeah.
just
Also,
having to have the
it's-
conversation.
It serves a purpose if you're checking out at the grocery store, if you're buying something in line at the movie theater,
Yeah.
if you're, pumping gas and someone comes up, there's a purpose for it
Yeah.
in certain
It's
situations.
the conversations you're not about to go into a debate about the state of the world while
you're
pumping your
buying-
gas.
Well,
Yeah.
a very
Yeah.
real example of that is like when I was checking someone out at Half Price Books,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe someone said something that was interesting.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I bet I would really like you as a person, but I have a line of 12 other people
yeah,
that I need
exactly.
to serve. I can't sit here and have this
serves-
conversation right now.
Yes.
As much as I might want to,
I can't.
I need to go, okay, have a good day.
Yep.
Next, please, because
Yeah. So
that's the job, that's the responsibilities I've chosen, that's agreed to, so on and so forth. Like, you're not respecting, and it's very interesting.
the point flips. There's a time and place to have a real conversation, which is like when you don't have a task to accomplish. It's if you come in and try to talk to me about like, oh, my granddaughter's doing whatever. It's like right now I don't give a shit. I'm supposed to be doing 12 other things, and you're holding me up, going, "Oh, that's cool. You do this." It's
One
like,
of my
Well-
biggest pet peeves, actually.
Well, here's what's hilarious. If I threw 30 strangers in a bar right now, all of them would be on their phones. I guarantee you it would take at least an hour or a couple drinks
okay.
before somebody
A lot of
jumped
them.
into
if
the
you
into a
if you
conversation.
throw all introverts into a bar,
yes,
if
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
throw all extroverts into a bar, the conversation's going to start earlier. And introverts, the conversation's going to start later on. The conversation's still going to happen. It's just like it's starting it is difficult sometimes. And the thing about a good extrovert, a lot of extroverts that I know, they don't start off with what introverts think they start off with. It's not, extroverts can come up to you and go, what's your favorite, what's your favorite thing about World War II? And it's like, holy shit. They ask you questions that like...
Who are you? Why?
Yeah, like, what's your favorite dinosaur? I know someone that's purely extroverted, and I love talking to them. Because it's amazing. Because they ask questions like 4-year-olds. Because 4-year-olds
There's a real
they
fascination.
just want to know.
Yeah, it's a
Yes.
genuine fascination.
And like introverts try to start with how's your day going? And it's like, well, that's not going to start it. Ask a real
That's
question.
not going to ignite this.
That's
yes.
not yet. So like start a
Good.
It's going to take a while, but
Well,
they'll
see,
get there.
I think what's interesting and funny about that is introverts talking to other introverts. That works.
It does.
Yeah,
That's what's interesting about
Yes.
that. Is an introvert meeting another introvert and going, "How's your day?" Lets that introvert know, okay, you're not one of those crazy people
Correct.
who's going to be in my face asking
Yeah.
me all these questions. We
But
can talk.
but
Yeah.
introvert to extrovert
Yeah,
works great.
really great.
It is.
And
The
extrovert
best,
to extrovert works.
the best conversations I have as someone who is very, very introverted is one-on-ones. Or at the very least, like, very small group. Because the moment that I feel like I have to contribute in a positive way to this greater meta conversation, I just go, look, I'm not even gonna try. I don't care. I don't care about this meta conversation unless it's something like this that really matters. Like, unless I have a very strong opinion on it that I believe is not going to completely offend someone, right? Because even in that, like, offending someone gets back to kind of the core of this conversation.
Yeah.
I do shy away from certain topics because I don't want to offend someone in the goal of continuing the conversation with
Yeah.
them. And it goes back to that conversation that I had about my faith. I'm not going to come out and be like, hey, I disagree with this X, Y, or Z. I'm a Christian. I want to get to know you first. So one of my favorite questions I've ever been asked is while I was in college and I was trying to do coding, which did not work. Not how my brain works. I'm very confident in that fact. Very cool, really respect coders, not how my brain works. someone was teaching me, another student, a classmate. He did it professionally. He was paid to code. He was just getting his degree, so he really knew what he was doing, and he wanted to teach people. It was really awesome. Worked out well for me. But I went to go hang out with him at his house, and he was like, "Man, well, fuck." And then he stopped. He goes, "Oh." He knew I was a Christian. It was one of the first things we talked about. He goes, "Oh, does that offend you?" And it wasn't mocking. It wasn't like, "Does that offend you?"
Genuine
Yeah.
question.
It was like, "Hey, does that offend you?" And I really felt like, man, you really took the time to care about what might offend me because you don't know. I said, "No, man, it's fine." About 5 minutes later, he goes, "Jesus Christ." He goes, "Does that offend you?" And I was like, that one's not as nice to hear from me. And he goes, I won't say it anymore. Not around you, because I know. That, to me, I am so much more willing to have so many more conversations with that person about so many other things, and has left such a positive taste in my mouth, and a story to tell for years to come, because he took the time. It's not to say, tiptoe around everyone, don't be confident in what you believe, but take the time to be conscious of what other people believe, and work through the conversation to get to the heavier things. If I start out with a conversation that says, "What's your favorite part about World War II?" That's starting a conversation. Chances are I'm not going to offend anyone. What's your favorite dinosaur? It's going to be pretty hard to offend someone with that question.
Would assume
That I believe in
I
dinosaurs?
found the 1 in a billion.
Right.
That
Yeah.
is-
So taking the time to work into the conversations that matter, that are heavier, that we should be having, it does take time. But it's worth taking that time.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
It's quality over quantity, and it's always been true in every
every
facet
time.
of life.
Everywhere.
It is like, if you just take the time, everything's going to work. Everything works out better.
I can't go post something on Facebook right now that is some incredible. What if it's the best political statement of all time and it just solves so many things? I'm going to reach my family and friends. I have not taken the time to put in the work to develop that platform where people trust this person knows what they're talking about. This is all the work they've done to be able to back that statement up. I can go then post that statement and a completely different effect.
Yep.
Because I've taken the time to work out the things that matter to be able to speak on something like that. Yep. And the same goes for personal conversations. It's not as much work. It's just, it does require some work. And it matters.
Yeah.
So as far as going back to the conversation of like trying to understand people, when y'all were talking about introverts and extroverts, I don't feel like a lot of people know this, but I was recently reading, so this is going to be paraphrased, and I can't remember the person who did the experiment. But so the way the brain works in introverts and extroverts, and again, this is paraphrasing. I don't know if this is a universal thing in psychology, but this guy did an experiment on babies, and he examined the babies as they grew up into adulthood. And so the experiment is when they're children, he would, I think it was, he did something to antagonize babies. And some babies either like, ooh, that's okay, like it's fine, or some of them cried. And
What a douche.
it is kind of weird if you look at it like that. But
Hey man, better him than me.
But it's a way of understanding. So a lot of the children that cried, when he grew up, he found like they're more introverted, or they have more introverted tendencies. And the reason, after doing more studies, a part of your brain, the amygdala, which is like the fear center, I guess there's a lot more to it than just that. I don't want to oversimplify it. But the amygdala is literally, it's wherever that fear center is, it's literally bigger or it's more active. I don't know if they correlate in introverts. So when I look at myself and I go through my everyday life, I'm an introvert. I'm like literally looking at like corners of the room, like going, okay, we're safe here. Like, and I can put myself at ease, especially in new environments.
Yeah.
So with extroverts, like, they're not doing that. They're going, oh, hey, how can I make a friend,
Yeah.
It's like,
It's-
They're charging into battle first.
Yeah.
pretty much.
Right. Well, it's so
the
interesting
charge.
to me.
We're good. Let's go.
It's
Anyways,
fearless.
I thought, yeah, it is fearless.
It is fearless amongst people. And there's times where it's like, you think you're fearless, and it's like, I could do X, Y, Z that would seem crazy to other people, but are well within your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And then you think of people that are like capable of amazing things. People that are capable of like performing open heart surgery on like babies. And then you think, and then you go to them in a social situation, and they might be completely terrified of talking to another person.
Yep.
And it's like your comfort zone is so different from another person's.
Because the comfort zone of that guy who's comfortable talking to people is
not
nowhere
gonna be,
near of performing open heart surgery on a baby.
Exactly.
Like,
it's so interesting, and it's just perspective. It's people are scary sometimes.
If there's one word that I think hits everything that this conversation needs to be, it is perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It is understanding your own perspective and how that affects the way that you live your life and the actions that it informs. When it comes to the current events and something that I think should be talked about more, working on and understanding your own perspective is that first step.
Yeah.
When you do that, you're able to then go have those conversations. And I think there's something very important to being able to walk away. And it's, that's what I was going to say. Weeding out the people who are unproductive for society.
Yes.
That's what the ability to walk away does.
Yep.
Finding and if we can have more people that grow confident in their ability to have productive conversations, we will find those people who do not have productive conversations and be able to walk away from them and go, hey, if you don't want to be a part of this, you go be by yourself, and you experience that, and it's not going to be that great, I promise you.
Yeah.
At the end of you might go for a while thinking you can just suck it up and it's going to be fine and this is the right way to live. But at the end of the day, when
it gets lonely out there,
50 to 60% of the world has moved into something like this, and they're working together and we're solving actual issues and growing and really developing, and we're able to, 60% of the world's able to go, does the Wally chair, we can make it. We've advanced far enough. Do we make it? And we go, we don't need it. That's what I think ultimately matters here. Perspective.
Yeah.
Start at perspective. If you've worked on your perspective, start having the conversations that matter. And if you're having those conversations that matter, just be really intentional with them and pass the word on. Don't be afraid to challenge people in a healthy way.
Yeah. We also live in an age now where fearing the unknown is just not an excuse anymore. It's way too easy to know things now. Like, if you're scared of something because you don't know it, look it up.
Yeah.
It's to that point.
Reach out to someone who does.
Like, somebody knows that thing that you're afraid of. So it's not an excuse anymore. We got to stop making excuses for ourselves and just do the work.
Something that really helped me growing up, I don't know if it helped me growing up, but it has always been active in my mind since I've learned it, is the butterfly effect, which is every action, could split, no matter what you do, it could split off into like 5 other possibilities, and then of those possibilities, there's more possibilities. That's something that has really given me perspective on everything. And I don't remember when I learned about it. I don't remember, ever sitting down and like actually taking the time to learn about it. But when I did, my brain's always worked that way. My brain has always gone, if I do this, then X, Y, Z happens. Mm-hmm. If I do this, then blank happens. Like, where do I want to go? It's always been easy to see 3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to predict how people are going to react to whatever you say. So I feel like if people just take the time to think about actions.
Think before you speak. What a concept.
I know, right? Even more than speaking, just actions. Like what you do affects everything. I don't know. People need to learn that to look more than 5 feet in front of them.
Yeah. It's to all my science nerds out there, like what you're talking about. I remember being taught every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That is how everything in nature works. Mm-hmm. Everything you do has an opposite reaction. Everything you say has an equal and opposite reaction. Yeah. So just trying to carry that perspective. Think about that the next time you like write somebody off.
Yeah.
Say something offensive around someone. It's just try. Just give it a try. See what happens.
It's also interesting to look at I look at, okay, so when a task is given to me, I try to do it in the most efficient way possible, no matter what. And sometimes the most efficient way possible is to ask someone else to do it. Like, if you're doing...
Humility.
If you're doing 9 things
Yeah.
and someone's not doing something, it's the easiest way to get that task done is to go, hey, could you take care of this for me real quick?
Yep.
Could you do this for me real quick? And you know, let's say without perspective, the other person is going, why the fuck are they asking me to do their job? You know, it's your job. Why don't you handle it?
Yeah.
And then if you look at it from, you know, if you go, well, maybe how is this person doing? It's like, oh, they're juggling 12 things right now.
Yeah.
Maybe I can handle this for them.
Lighten the load.
And that's the point of like offering. Sometimes it's like, oh, they're doing a lot of shit. Hey, what can I do to help?
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you look at things in the most efficient way possible, you can solve a lot of issues. There's a, you know, well, and
Yeah.
to the point that I wasn't even making, but you bring up is humility, is admitting when you need, like, hey, can I get some help? Like, can you? I can't do this alone.
Help me.
Yeah.
Yes. That's good.
Okay.
Do you have anything that you want to wrap up with? I mean, starting off this conversation.
Not necessarily. I don't know. I think we kind of hit everything home. I'm elated that we could have this conversation the way that we have right now.
It stays true to us, and I was a little nervous that we would kind of delineate from who we are, but I mean, this is who we are, and this is where we're at currently, and we're trying to grow. We're trying to become better.
I feel so much better after this one rather than the past one, because the last one, fighting against something that you agree with.
Yeah.
I was like,
very
man,
hard.
I did not give a lot of good content in that last
that's
episode,
good.
but
That's
in this,
good.
it's like, yeah, it felt good.
I think if I were to say anything to our listeners, just
Like, comment, and subscribe.
well, yeah, definitely that. But also just
Nothing else.
I don't know. Don't take if you got through this whole thing, don't take it lightly. Like really spend some time. Sit on it. Think about it. Because like I said when we were going through, like I'm not perfect at all this stuff. None of us are. Like
Not
this
even
is
close.
something we all constantly have to work towards getting better at. So just let it sit for a while. Really consider. Really think about it. And just like we said, perspective and consideration will take you so far in this world.
Yeah.
So far. Being able to walk in somebody else's shoes and being able to consider the next person will get you a lot further than anything else will. That's just the truth.
Agreed.
So, yeah, with that, as far as like current events and stuff like that are, like I said, don't drown yourself in it, because then you're just gonna ball yourself in a corner.
It's actually a point I did want to make. I think one of the questions I assume that we might get is how can you go from talking about this to talking about a Wally chair, or talking about this and just like hanging out over movies. And it's exactly that.
No.
We cannot become better by drowning ourselves in heavy issues. We have to balance the same way we talked about balancing other things. There's a time to laugh. There's a time to be serious. There's a time to cry. There's a time to hope. There's a time to dream. There's a time for everything. And we want to promote that here as well. I mean, across the table is recognizing having all the conversations that matter, sitting across from every type of conversation that we can and seeing what comprises us, what makes us better, what makes us grow.
Yeah.
And this is just as important as taking the time to rest and relax and have fun.
Yeah.
You can't do them one without the other.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing I would promote, as far as like staying up on current events, look for other news sources. They exist, like other articles. Know that everywhere you go, there is no such thing as unbiased news. If anything ever tries to promote to you that it's unbiased, immediately get rid of it because it's not true.
Yeah.
We all
I think owning your bias is the best way
is
to
the best way to do it. If a news network
Get
came up
trust.
to me and said, we are biased in this direction, I will happily listen to them because I know I have to filter everything through that bias.
Absolutely.
So it's like it's being smart about what we listen to, what we take in, and how we regurgitate that.
Yeah.
That's the other part. I would always promote to you, I meant to bring it up earlier, but Socrates has the 3 sieves of truth. And the 3 sieves are, I think, hold on, let me put them up because I got them right here. It is the first sieve of truth is, do you know yourself to be true? Like, is it something you can back up? Is it good information? And is it necessary? If whatever you're looking at or you're talking about doesn't make it through those 3 sieves, it goes away.
Or,
I feel like
or
the third
work on
is
it.
skipped over a lot.
Well, or work on it until it becomes
Until it
those,
becomes
right?
those, yeah,
Don't
but-
go around like. I'm sorry, I relate everything to being Christian. It's what I am. It's what I know most about. But in my early stages of being a Christian, I don't have the ability to go up to people and really explain why I am a Christian, how I became that way, why it matters, why I think it's true or important. It has taken a lot of time for me to be able to work out how to present that to people.
Yeah.
And same goes there. I mean, if you have an idea that you think matters or is good, but you don't have the right way to present it, work through it.
Yeah.
Talk with other people about you wanting to present it. Don't be afraid to say, have humility and say, I think this matters, I just don't know how to present it.
Also, side note, and like, this isn't necessarily related to the topic, but get y'all some real friends, man. Facts. Like, stop surrounding yourself with people who just hype you.
Yes.
No good.
Agreed.
Like,
Easier said than done sometimes.
it is.
It is.
But
Absolutely.
it's one of those things. It's one of the things I love about this group.
Yeah.
And like some of my other friends that I can reach out to, where I know I have people that just aren't gonna ride my hype train.
Yeah.
That can be real with me, and that I can be real with, and that conversations like this can happen. So with that, I love y'all. I'll send you some stuff that we can put for links for people to read and alternative news sources
Descriptions
and
and all that.
Yep. We'll have everything. We can back it all up. But outside of that, yeah,
We're good.
we're good.
Cool.
All right, signing off.
Signing off.
Have a good one.
Cheers.
Next time we'll have drinks.